So my name's Eran Shellhorn. I am a little bit of everything kind of developer, but freelance. I do back end, I do front end, I do DevOps, system admin stuff, just kind of whatever I need to do. And it's all a hobby, so there's always something to do. So if you're not familiar with DevTools, which hopefully you all are, whether or not you use Firefox or Chrome, both are good, but I use Chrome, that's all I know. It's what's on here, so we'll go with that. The first thing that I wanted to share is kind of just a trivial appearance sort of thing, but I get sick of staring at white screens all day. Maybe you guys do too. My editors, I'm a big Monokai guy. Like that's the color scheme I like. I don't have Monokai for DevTools, but what we can do is turn on theming for DevTools. So within the settings, you have a little gear icon up here. You're going to pop that open, and you know what? Where is it?
There's the color format right there.
Hey man, you have your scroll all backwards. Oh, you know what? Actually, sorry. This is actually going to start with flags. So if you've not been to the flag screen in Chrome, this is where you can try experimental features of all sorts and shapes, and some are bad and some are really cool, and some are just really boring or don't do anything. If we why is it?
It's gotta be the worst presentation ever.
Well, you throw this on me. So you're going to look for Enable DevTools Experiments. There it is. And all we're going to do is click Enable. Nothing's going to happen, although the little footer here is now going to prompt us to relaunch. So we'll do that. And then look at Mike's terminal. So we've done that. Seemingly nothing's changed. Now, if we go back to DevTools in any window, go back to our settings, there's now an Experiments tab. And along with everything else here, we can enable custom UI themes. There's other things here you might want to play with too, but we'll let Matt tell you about those. You do Canvas, right?
Yeah, occasionally.
Figure it out. So we've turned that on. Again, nothing's changed. Now we're going to go to the Chrome store. We'll get rid of DevTools for the moment. And now that we've enabled theming, you can install a theme from the store. Just search for something like DevTools theme, maybe. And here are some different options. Pretty sure Flatland's what I've used, and that's been nice. So we're going to set Mike up with that and see if it's active. Boom, look at that. You could stare at that all day long. In fact.
I hate it.
Do you? So there you go. Now you've got a color palette to match your IDE, so you can jump back and forth.
It's really confusing where you are.
Well, luckily it's paletted a little differently. There. Ha. That's probably a terrible workflow to have DevTools in full screen, but there you go. Now your DevTools is themed and you're ready to go. So the original idea for this meetup was to have everyone pick a tab in DevTools, become very familiar with it, or if you already are, that's great, but we don't necessarily have that. So I think this should kind of be an open discussion of sorts, show something cool, and if anyone else has an interesting little pro tip.
Something I discovered, and maybe everybody knows, but I discovered a couple of months ago that you can do the emulate, and the screen will become like a cell phone or a tablet there from the...
Yeah.
And for me, that was like groundbreaking when I discovered it.
And that's a fairly new tool to be added into Chrome. I don't know when it went into stable, but...
There was a couple different variations of it.
That's true.
Toolbar and stuff like that.
That's true. You had it down here at one point where you could pick a basic screen size, but they've kind of gone a little more so with that. So now, in any version of Chrome, be it any of the betas or the main publicly available version, you now have this small little button up here. It looks like a little tablet. Clicking that will throw your viewport into this whole new mode. And amongst your options here, probably the handiest, let's go somewhere that's
Well, you refresh it, it will.
except the Chrome store didn't like that user agent, so it shut us down. So Twitter might be a fun example. So the very top of your window now, with the emulation mode enabled, you can select a device. And the great thing about this, if you're not familiar with it, is it will not only reshape the viewport to the dimensions of the device, but it'll also change pixel densities and some other, the user agent. So now we can go browse the web as an Nexus 4. If you get a prompt here at the top, even though we can't read it all, it's just telling us to refresh. And so now we're viewing the same resolution, densities as the Nexus 4. And it even throws your cursor into this mode. You see it's a little dot instead of a typical cursor. That means it's emulating touch events and not just typical mouse behavior. Amongst the, so there's two new interesting features to this that weren't a part of any of the emulation tools in Chrome originally. One is network throttling. So you can select a speed of your choice and throttle that connection accordingly. Great for those people that care about performance. Yeah.
Is that only available in device emulation, or is that something that's there for desktop?
I've not seen it anywhere else.
You can get out of, if you hit the reset, like that little circle with a slash through it, to the left, it'll all the way to the top left.
Oh, that guy.
Right there, it'll set it.
Oh, look at that, and you can emulate it right there.
Yeah, and you can still emulate it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Or at the top, yeah.
So now we can refresh. So yeah, so now we still have device emulation, but we've turned off all of the constraints, leaving just the network throttling. So that's cool. Except looks like we still have user agent.
I don't know, it's loaded up a different thing at Twitter, but whatever.
Oh, now we're on the mobile subdomain. That'll do it. The other interesting feature that seems really cool, I haven't actually worked it into my production yet, but this kind of strange looking icon over here in the top left, media queries, the tooltip really tells you a lot, but this will actually analyze the CSS and show you where each breakpoint exists. So you can go down and actually click a specific breakpoint and it will crop the viewport to fit that. Yeah, really cool. I don't know where it went though. It's
You
refreshing.
might want to get off of the Edge network.
I'm from Alachua, man. That's regular speed.
That's 42.
So, anyone else have anything cool to share about device emulation?
Yeah, it's pretty. Like another thing, just to let everybody know is, still using the WebKit rendering engine, or Blink in this case. So even though you might be emulating a Windows tablet or something like that, it's not going to render the same, and it's not going to render exactly the same as it is on an iPhone, etc.
Yeah, font stacks will still vary.
Yeah.
All of your typical browser differences. That's a good thing to keep in mind. So
How do you debug JavaScript in this?
you can.
You can't.
You can.
You can't have how do you put the breakpoint there?
So that's going to fall into one of these later tabs, sources specifically. Does that theme actually make seeing the screen more difficult here?
Horrible, dude.
Let's get rid of it. if you're testing for all the little idiosyncrasies of different devices and browsers, then you're not going to get that much out of it. But looking for breakpoints and kind of just general, the basics, it seems fine for that. And its handling of pixel densities, or its emulation of pixel densities, is really helpful too. Let's restart.
Oh, look at that. So instead of actually using my mouse.
Like a sucker.
Yeah, like a type it.
There's all sorts of, I don't actually know most of them, but there's a whole slew of weird little dev panels and all this information that you can get from these different addresses underneath Chrome. I think URLs, somewhere it'll tell you all of the different internal sites, but I don't know what it is. Chrome URLs. There you go. So if you ever get really bored on a Saturday morning, you can go look at all these and see what's available to you. I don't think I'd recommend doing that, though. There's probably better things you could do. So back to the question of breakpoints and JavaScript debugging. We are now in the Sources tab of DevTools, now in the plain boring theme. And on the left here, this file tree represents every asset that was loaded from this page. So it'll start with the domain that it arrived from, and it'll even represent the actual paths on the servers. Let's go to something else. No, that's ugly. There we go. That's better. So you see all the external resources that were loaded here from Discuss, Google Analytics, but then you also see the local assets. So we can open this up and we can see the two different scripts that are in use on the site. And if we wanted to debug this minified code, that might seem kind of like a pain, and Chrome kind of has your back here, this small button here, the two brackets, tooltip, pretty print. We'll go through and just reformat the code, make it somewhat readable. Ugh, how do you deal with that?
You just blew my mind.
Is that not
I did not know that.
outstanding? Now you can debug minified code.
You asset pipeline, you screwed me.
Why code these things? I didn't know that.
That'll be $5.
I'll do it next time.
That's the craziest thing with Chrome, is there's so many tiny little buttons hidden in corners that you don't know about until Andy Asmani puts out a little Twitter tweet about something.
GIFs.
those tiny little curly braces.
Yeah.
Of course, that's what that does.
So now we are looking at all of the footer JavaScript formatted into pretty print. It's still uglified, so it's not necessarily something you can really chew on, but if you want to set a breakpoint in Chrome, all you do, click on a line number. It's going to highlight it in blue. And then on the next page load, it knows to stop us there. Cool, it even remembered that we had pretty print turned on, so it didn't just explode when there was only 4 lines and the breakpoint was on 183. But now that we're frozen in this little world, you have kind of the typical debugging tools available to you. Interestingly, you can hover over, look at that. You can hover over variables and you can see what their contents actually may be it a function, be it any kind of other value. And in some cases, you can even actually go in here and rewrite your JavaScript, have it basically save it kind of into this temporary space, and you can still execute the JavaScript on that page with your live revision. I don't really want to bother with that here because that's just gibberish. Yeah, this isn't necessarily my tab of expertise. Does anyone want to enlighten us more in the pro tip?
If I were enlightening about anything, it would probably be network and resources, probably.
Let's give you the resources and I'll talk about network.
Well, I think you guys should just go ahead and start doing that now, because I don't have a good example set up like this.
I'll give the network first. All right. So for the recording, my name is Mike Herschel. All right, so let's all find out the stuff that's really screwed up about Eran's site here. Man, what the heck is that ugly?
Site.
All right, so the network panel or the network tab. There's a bunch of cool stuff on here. Let's take it to the bottom. All right. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh the page right here, and we're going to see that you're going to see a list of all the assets that come down with the website. Each website, of course, is made up of like a whole bunch of different things. A bunch of pictures, some crappily written JavaScript, some CSS, obviously the HTML document, etc. So let's take a look at the waterfall right here. And actually, this is really quick. You know what I want to do? I think I want to slow this down. All right, so I'm going to slow it down. Still too quick.
That is one optimized website.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. There we go. We can see stuff. It's just 10 seconds, Aaron. Come on. Okay.
Oh, font's awesome, man. Jeez.
Yeah. So what you can see is that there's a couple different like really important distinctions here. You hear about back-end performance and you hear front-end performance. So the back-end performance is how long it takes to get that initial HTML document in there. And Eran's is generating really, really quick here in 95 milliseconds. So is this a static site, or you run Jekyll or something like that, or what are you doing?
And this is a Ghost blog, so it's written in Node.js. It's
Okay.
actually running on a VPS with 128 megabytes of RAM.
Okay, so it's running Node, which is obviously fast. So if you're running like a traditional content management system, WordPress or Drupal, usually a lot slow, and you generally try to have your initial page load with under a half a second. Sometimes like the site that I'm currently working on right now, on the front page, the initial page load is 6 seconds. And so that's a little bit too long. But so after that, so this is the initial HTML document, and then the Chrome or your browser will start reading the CSS, will start reading some of the JavaScript, and will start pulling in images. It'll pull these assets down 6 at a time. So if you have 18 requests right here, it's going to pull in 6, then another 6, and then another. Well, pull in the initial one, and then 6, 6, and 5. And some of them are going to be dependent on others, and you can see that based on the initiator right here, like what's calling it. So you can see this main web page right here is calling this script right here. So let's take a look at some of the stuff right here. So each one of these assets right here is an HTTP request, which stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. And so every time that your browser has to reach out to the server to pull down one of these, it has to do it has to say, hey, I need this file. Okay, well, hey, this is blah blah, and it has to go through this whole handshake process and pull this down. So that's it, even though it happens really, really fast, once you get into like 100 HTTP requests or something like that, it starts slowing down the front end. So you really want to minimize your HTTP requests. 1718 is really good right here. I try to keep it under, it depends on the type of website that you're making. Like if you're making a blog, 1718 is good. If you're making like a full featured site, keep it under 50, keep it under 100. If it's over 100, you can usually do something. A couple of different ways to limit your HTTP requests are by combining images, like all your icon images, into a sprite, using an icon font, using concatenate your JavaScript, put it all together, put your CSS all together, etc. So looking at these things, you'll also see what is the status code right here. So everything right here is downloading fine. If something doesn't come in, you'll see a 404 right here. So if you see a 404, you want to troubleshoot that. It means it's trying to get something off of your server that doesn't exist. That'll also slow down the rendering time because your browser is going to wait for that for a certain amount of time. It'll say, what are you downloading right here? So you can see like he's downloading some HTML, some CSS, some fonts. You can also sort or filter up across the top up here. So going over, you see the initiator. This is what initiated the call for that asset. So sometimes you might have JavaScript initiating a call for another script or something like that, and you'll see that right in here. You'll see the size of the content right here. So you're going to see two different sizes right here. So the first size right here is the size over the wire. What most servers will do if they're properly configured is they'll actually kind of zip up your text files before they send it down to the browser, and then the browser will seamlessly unzip it. That's called gzipping. So this file right here is 3.8 kilobyte gzipped, but once you unzip it, it's 13.8. So you're going to see a lot of big differences with some of the text files, like the CSS file and JavaScript file and stuff like that. When you get down to images, you're going to see much less of a difference right here. You can see it, and a lot of times your server won't even bother to gzip images. You can click on an asset right here. Let's click on this horrible picture, and you can see some cool information right here. All your HTTP headers, right? So you're getting a little bit down into the protocol right here, but you'll see the request headers are what your browser said it needs, you know, and what it says it, you know, basically all this information. The response is what you're getting from the server. Obviously, you'll see your cache settings right here. You can see he's running Express right here, which is obviously Node. If you're running like reverse proxies like Varnish, you can troubleshoot to see if your Varnish is taking effect right here. The E tag is another caching mechanism right here. You can see the content type, which is the same as the MIME type. A lot of times, if you don't have your MIME types configured properly within your server, your browser won't render a file properly. So that's something. You have a preview of it. Oh my God. You're like, guys. Say,
Gorgeous.
yeah.
What you're looking for.
You can see, like, obviously, you can see a bunch of cookie stuff and like all the timing stuff, right? So let's get out of that. So if you look at the bottom right, actually, let's move over right here. You can see the timeline. So I don't know what the color really signifies right here. So you can see the latency. You see how it's like a little bit translucent right here? That's the latency. And then the actual solid part is it when it's receiving the file.
What's the blue line?
The blue line is DOM content loaded. Should tell you at the second or so. DOM content loaded 5.73 seconds. That's horrible. It's horrible on my edge connection here. So so when the DOM content loads, that's when you can first see the website, but the pictures might still be loading. You know.
Is that the blue line?
Yeah. The blue line is DOM content loading, and so that means the website's there, but it's still loading the pictures. And then the final line right here, this red line is, all right, I finally downloaded everything after 10 freaking seconds. So that's pretty much it. Let's look at like maybe a more complicated site. I'm trying to think of what's a site that's crazy.
MSN.com?
Hmm?
MSN.com.
Yeah. Oh, we're on Edge. I'm just going to put this on regular here. No throttling and just whatever. Damn MSN. All right. Oh, why is it shrunk? All right, so you can see it right there. So MSN has, looks like 99 HTTP requests. It's downloading about a gigabyte of data. A megabyte. Same thing, right? Same thing.
Trivial.
Yes.
Difference, I know. I'm a pedantic.
Yeah, gigabyte, megabyte, yeah. It's a couple letters, whatever. So you'll see the DOM content was loaded in 1.25 seconds. And it looks like some other stuff is continuously coming down. Probably like some type of lazy loading or ads or something like that coming in from external stuff. So let's kind of take a look around right here. So yeah, you can see there's a number of different iframes coming in right here, probably ads. You can see one style sheet. You see a bunch of images, right? You can sort by size here. The biggest image is this guy right here. Ah! You know what? As bad as this is, it's better than the picture of Eran.
Too soon.
Yeah. So like one of the things I was working on my company's website, and this is back when I didn't have anything to do. I was kind of waiting for some stuff to get going. I was doing some performance optimizations on our website, and one of the things I noticed is there was this little small thumbnail in the footer of our website, and it was like 200 kilobytes because it was a ping, but it could have been. I converted it to a JPEG, and it went from like 200 kilobytes down to around 20 kilobytes. So that shaved off like 180 kilobytes that you have to download. We did that to a couple, and we were almost down to half a megabyte. So if you check stuff like this, like you find like a lot of real low-hanging fruit. So let's just kind of maybe look around right here. Obviously, you have your disable cache button. If I go back here and I refresh, you're gonna see some the 302, that means it was cached right there. So typically you want to disable your cache just for the heck of it. The filter turns on and off, this little filter right here. You can clear it out by hitting that and then hit record if you want to record more stuff. Honestly, I mean, that's about it. Does anybody have any questions or anything?
You got a bit to add, for sure.
What's that?
I have a bit to add.
Okay. Come on up here.
So something I've been working a lot with lately has been I don't know if anyone's familiar with Civi CRM, but it's this monolithic plugin for Drupal, WordPress, and Joomla, and some kind of a standalone thing. And there's a group trying to maintain this for all of these different environments. And then on top of that, you also have developers making plugins that are trying to be compatible in all of these environments. So it's kind of an ordeal to work with. And we've been working on a integration for Civi CRM with Stripe, which if you're not familiar with Stripe, there's not a lot of detail to be concerned with other than it's a payment processor like Authorize.net. However, they have a lot of cool developer-friendly aspects that we won't talk about. But let's look at one of these forms real quick. So we've been working on dealing with this plugin and a number of issues that it has, but it all starts with a form. You have an HTML form that you put payment information into. You click submit, it posts to something. And one of the questions has been, what information is really coming out of this form and where is it going? And that's one of the interesting things that the network tab is very helpful with, and I would say worth sharing. So
You can disable the mobile emulation to get some more screen space there.
I clicked the little button here,
You
but
have to do it down next to the inspector thing.
oh.
The little blue icon.
Next to Ellen?
Yeah, next to the magnifying glass.
What magnifying glass? What are you? Oh, just that guy. Ah, yeah.
It took me a while to figure that out, honestly.
I just kind of forget that it's there to deal with it. So we're gonna have a little form here. We're gonna say.
You're going to show me your password?
It's pass, actually, is the password I'm using here. And so card number, this is in test mode, so we're going to use a test number. 1, 2, 3, make up some dates here. Okay, so we've got a little form together. I'm going to clear out the network tab. So we've got a little fresh start here. One of the things I like to have open is the console as well. And when in any of these tabs, you can use the escape key to hide and show this secondary window, which will also show the console. So on both of these, I'm going to check preserve log, which means that instead of the default functionality, which is every time you change pages, that entire window clears out, now it's going to keep whatever content was there, and then it's just going to continue to concatenate all of this information. The difference is when I click the submit button, we're going to see a post request go out from the browser to the server. So there's our first network occurrence, and it's post. And then it goes into actually a 301 redirect loop, but that's not actually what we're worried about here. That's fixed on my computer, but I just haven't actually pushed that yet. Okay, so anyhow, that happens. Oh man, bummer. But what we can do is view the headers from this post, which introduces something kind of interesting. And that is, you can see all of the information that was sent to the server in this post. It's formatted in this funny way rather than something really clear, but you can still kind of see what's going on here. So if we scroll down here through a number of these fields, and in every one of these instances, you see the name of the field, and then down here is what value is actually sent to the server for that. And in the case with this Stripe extension, it does something that we don't really want, which is it actually posts credit card details to the server.
To the server or your server?
To our server.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, that's not good.
Comply.
Yeah, and I'm not doing that. And that's the cool thing about Stripe as a payment processor is that you can avoid all of that. You can avoid credit card details touching your server, but you can still take payments directly on your site, not using a redirect off to PayPal or something. But so in an instance where you were trying to debug and figure out what's happening from a form, you can use preserve log, which will, and if preserve log weren't on, that post would kind of happen, and then we'd start loading the next page, so that would clear out. We'd lose all of that information, but leave preserve log on, you're still going to see that. And the same function exists for your console. So if you have some little console log or something that's firing off right before a page load, then you're going to get it. Plus, you can see all the weird things that other websites might be doing with your data, or really irresponsible things. But and actually, a little tip that's not related to DevTools, but if I wanted to prevent these fields from posting to the server, all you actually have to do is remove the name attribute from the input, and then it won't post anywhere. And that's how the form that I wrote myself works, but this is somebody else's mess. Any questions?
Why wouldn't you want to post somewhere?
In this case, we have a credit card number in that field, and the way that Stripe works is there's basically JavaScript on the page that you can post that credit card number to their servers over SSL, and then they'll give you a unique token back, and then all you actually have to post to your server is that single token, which is not, it's useless to anyone except you. You post that, or you post that to your server, and then all of your actual transaction logic happens on your back end. It communicates that payment with Stripe. So your server never actually sees their sensitive information. It's kind of a cool workaround because the alternatives are all ugly. Authorized, DPM, ugh, nasty. Okay, I think that kind of completes network. Nobody ever really talked about elements, but
You want to talk about elements?
yeah, I'll see if I can cover a little bit of it here. So let's look at Twitter again, because they probably have a nice, clean, pleasant to work with DOM. So elements is the default tab that's open in DevTools when you pop it open. So all of you may have seen it, but what you get here is a kind of tree layout of the entire DOM of the website. Sorry, I'm showing off your personal Twitter, but deal with it. That's true, probably is. So what you get here, as opposed to the alternative, if you wanted to look at the source of a website, which would be view page source, this is quite literally just the initial HTML that comes from the server. So nothing's happened. There hasn't been any JavaScript changing the DOM. So what you get here is the actual current DOM, and it's actually, somewhat parsable to the human brain, as opposed to this, which is never really fun to deal with. So there's a number of things, and there's a lot of depth to this, but one of my favorite aspects of this tab is the ability to select any element, and we can do so by right-clicking anything, clicking Inspect Element. So it's going to find that element within this tree and highlight it. And we can actually hover over and kind of observe the structure of this element. But with any of these selected, this right column actually displays all of the active CSS that's applying to that particular element. And this might be what most of you are familiar with, but the cool thing about this as well is that you can change any of these CSS attributes in real time. And in fact, you can even add additional attributes as well. If you click beneath the last element, it'll let you type something in. We'll go ahead and break that. If you are in a workflow where you're trying to develop and you're adding CSS and you're kind of building your layout, one of the really helpful tools for me is this little plus sign here, another hidden little icon, and it creates a new style rule. So it's going to come up with the CSS selector just somewhat arbitrarily, and it's generally not what you'd want to use in your CSS. But if nothing else, it actually does give you some sort of selector that will target whatever element you had selected. So now you can go and begin writing your CSS as usual. But the thing to note here is that it creates this inspector style sheet for you. In any other instance, in any other rule, this all points to a file that came from the server, but in this case, it's actually storing it in a local style sheet. Clicking it pulls us to the Sources tab, where it's actually created an inspector style sheet that it's injecting onto the page. So I can go through this page and work on all sorts of my CSS at once, and it's building all of these rules onto inspector style sheet. Granted, it's kind of a mess because it's using selectors that you might not actually be using in your own CSS, but you can use this to rapidly build out your next iteration on what your CSS is going to be. I think that's pretty handy. In fact, I could never learn CSS until this taught me, until I could sit there and play with values, move things around on my own.
Yeah, that's good to know, because when you're going into those elements and you're changing them, and you get what you want, sometimes you can't remember where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah.
That way it's sitting in that file, you can go in and yank it and put it in your CSS file.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so easy to find the property that's got your design off by a single pixel, and you change it here and you fix it, but because you changed it on this style sheet, it's not actually going to be stored anywhere. And that's the one bummer that will inevitably get you at some point. If you spend too much time building your inspector style sheet and then you accidentally click a link, it's gone eventually.
Is there a way to push that to your files when you make things?
So there's a workflow that I don't use, and I just haven't gone down the path, but you can technically use DevTools almost as your IDE in a way. And I wish I knew more about it so I could tell you, but it all starts with this workspace area, and I haven't really explored it from there. But
And I think there's a thing on Grunt where you can do it too, right? Where you can do something and then it will.
yeah, there's a WordPress Chrome extension that will let you create CSS in DevTools, and it'll save it to the server's style.css file, which is kind of cool. There's because of the fact that Chrome extensions can interact with DevTools, there's tons of extensible stuff out there, but I find most of it's just kind of a distraction because you have what you need here. But so that's the fun of inspector style sheets. Of the other things you can do from the Elements tab, we can actually live edit parts of the DOM as well. If I right click here, we get a little menu. We can add an attribute to this object. Put some inline style in there because that needs to happen. Additionally, you can just click and drag elements from one place to another within the DOM. You can remove elements as well.
Do you ever like modify like a screenshot in DevTools and then screenshot it and send it to the company and say, well, you said this?
Yes. Maybe not that malicious. In the if you need to just display to someone a quick prototype or something, well, here's what this change would look like. You could easily go in, you could change one small minute detail, or you could really shift a whole bunch around. At a certain point, it wouldn't make a lot of sense. You could just change your source, but for a simple change or to prove your client wrong, totally handy for sure. Of the other element tidbits, computed is kind of interesting. So in the right column, we are on the Styles tab, which again shows you all of the applicable styles of the object that you've selected. Computed does something a little different. It shows you not only this fun little animation thing, but as well, how come I can't scroll in there? Oh, because the scroll's backwards, that's why. How do you deal with that? So this will show us, rather than where every single style is coming from and what file, this just shows us what styles Chrome has computed to be active and apply to this object. That's another thing about DevTools. You can use command or control plus minus and enlarge or zoom, just DevTools. Enhance. So now we can see these are the active styles, none of that other nonsense, none of these other rules that were overridden by something else. This is just what applies to that object, and this is what's making it what it is. Show inherited properties will balloon these styles considerably, but this is what styles this element has inherited from something else. And you see all these WebKit styles. Matt, what's the deal with those? Why don't you just make sense of those for us real quick? WebKit has its own way of defining appearance for things. So you see that you wouldn't necessarily write all of these properties. You could if you wanted, but in this case, Chrome just applies them to generate the appearance that it wants. Is that right? So you see all of the styles that have come from all of the parent elements of this object. Whoop-de-doo. For those that have trouble wrapping their heads around the box model, that's what this graphic is all about, and it's great for that. And in fact, you can double click in any of these positions and add values as well. Not sure where it actually puts that property, but probably inline. So this just demonstrates the size of the box, the padding, the border, the margin, top left, bottom right. Handy, sometimes.
How do you backtrack your size? Say you're working on a WordPress blog and it has a theme that, I don't know, the sidebar spacing is like this, and you want to reduce it or do something with that. But once you change something, there is like a whole bunch of other divs and tags and related to it. It's just crazy.
That's part of just the battle. But one of the things you can do, rather than just starting to add new styles on top of everything, is use the Styles tab intelligently and actually look through and see what styles are applying to this object now, and see if you can affect the change somewhere rather than inline or creating a new rule entirely for it. And that's really the value of this, is you can see the inheritance, and you can see what's causing what, and hopefully make the right decision, or just inline styles on everything and just be a baller.
So is the computed one the best one to make your changes in?
Computed isn't really the best to make a change in because you can't. But what you can do is
You have to find out which ones are active and then go back to the styles. Okay.
correct. So in some WordPress sites that I've worked on, it's like chaos everywhere. There's tons and tons of WooCommerce styles, and then the theme has all of these different styles, and this is just like miles long. And if you're just trying to figure out what set the font size, you're scrolling through just endlessly, like style sheet after sheet. And if there were just a way to see, where that style was actually coming from, that's what computed is.
Does it show you if you expand those little arrows?
Yeah, so it'll show you what sheet or what rule that's coming from. So rather than having to search through what is just endless, and you're looking for what's not grayed out. Yeah, that's total pain. And from here you can click on the style sheet and it'll take us there. Pretty print. Works on CSS too. And then event listeners. So this kind of delves from the CSS realm into JavaScript. And I would love for this to make sense to me, and I don't know if I'm not competent enough to understand or be able to use this the way that I would like, but the way that this reads to me is that this lists every event listener for that object, which seems straightforward enough, but what I've always had difficulty with is actually finding or identifying the listener that I'm looking for. But so each one of these, is it a JavaScript event? Click is a great one because we all know what click is.
Look at that. That's a drag and drop for all.
How did you do that? So because I'm not actually a good source on how to really decipher and get what you want out of this, but we can go in here, we could see the handlers, but somehow there's a missing link for me. Matt, maybe you could click all that for me. I don't know, but
Maybe. Doing a little bit of quick looking stuff.
what I want is I want to just jump to the function declaration that's registered that listener. Anyone?
If you go back to styles, I actually had a tip for the inspect element. So something I use all the time, two separate things, is you can, I don't know if anyone here, pseudo selectors kind of before and after.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if they have any in this DOM, but they'll show up as like little colon. So you can select it. And another really good one is if you want to debug a different state, for instance, a hover state.
Oh
So
yeah.
you try to hover, you can just go on it, you can right click on it, you can force it to go into that state. Yeah, active hover, visited.
Kind of trash this DOM. Let's refresh real quick.
I use pseudo selectors almost every day because less is more. So if you want to minimize your DOM, and they're pretty widely supported now.
All the way down to A9.
Oh. It's a modal light box. Get out of
I
there.
think that's like the login.
Get out of there. I just want something to hover over. Jeez. Okay, let's just use this AJAX. So here we go. We jumped all the way down to it. It's selected the text within the anchor tag. We're going to select the tag itself. We're going to get rid of our inspect element. Select the tag. There we go. So we've got the element selected, and this, the little dotted box with the mouse going into it, this is the states emulation. So if we want to be applying, we're creating new hover styles, all you have to do is check that, and it's now simulated hover there. So, and it also will update the styles that are being applied accordingly so that you can see all of the hover styles that are coming in. So let's just do something awesome like that's not going to do what I was hoping. Just going to copy that bit. was kind of hoping it would apply to, okay, there we go. So now we've changed the hover rule, and now we can do that to every pretty link. Ah, that's good, man. I like that. I'm going to use that. That's a good UX.
So I have a little tip that I'm just going to throw in here.
Jump on in.
So one of the things that I do, like when I'm doing my theming and stuff like that, you always want to like see how it's going to wrap. So like I might have comps or something like that show like advanced search here, but like how is it going to look if like there's like a really long string of text that the user might do? So I'll do stuff like this and just paste that in there and just make sure this is themed properly. And you can see like they have some text indent here. This don't look proper. So I would theme that up with padding instead of text indent or something like that. And that's just like another thing that you can do just by editing the.
And that's just double click on the content.
Yeah, just double click on the content, you know, and then take a screenshot and be like, dude, your website, it's saying these lewd things.
Totally troll people.
Yeah.
Totally.
So that's one thing, and then everything else, yeah.
If you could find a pseudo element in there, that is a really handy feature. It's just recently become a reality.
Shit. So this is like a website I did a while ago that's live, and I know I have some pseudo elements on here somewhere. Somewhere. Is this a pseudo element? After. Here's an after. These are just clear fixes. But they're pseudo elements. But yeah,
You could change it.
yeah. So like content.
So does anyone not know what a pseudo element is?
All right, go. Here, get up here so you can talk into the microphone.
I'm gonna go out and run by.
Brought this on yourself.
Okay. So a pseudo element is somewhat new to the spec, right? I mean, is it like CSS3? Is it that new? So basically what a pseudo element does is it allows you to do something that initially seems like it makes no sense at all, which is you can append content to an HTML object in your CSS. And that's exactly what Mike did right here. You see there's a content property available. And this happened all over the place at once, which is kind of funny. I don't know where to go. Did I kill it? All right, where'd one of our pseudo contents go?
Just like those main sections, probably have pseudo elements in there or something underneath.
They were all there earlier, I promise. Okay, so in your CSS, you can, let me just highlight one of these as an example. So we have a class name, colon, before. So what that's going to let you do is put a pseudo element before every instance of that class. In this case, you see what's being applied to it. It's basically creating a faux element that's going to clear floats, which is handy because alternative approaches to that involve putting a little dummy div in or something. So it's actually a little cleaner, and you're not adding content in your CSS, which that's what gets some people really riled up about the possibility, because you could have content of your website inside of your CSS, which breaks the entire point of having your style sheets outside of your content. Blowing up over here. It's the wife. You want me to answer it? Generally what this is used for, clear fixes is a great example, but oftentimes adding an icon, those are probably two of the best uses. Yeah. So generally it's used to add a little accent, so you're not actually putting content in, but you could totally have like, you know, this is a section. And there are instances where you would want to have text in there. And just in case you don't see that occurring, the text is appearing before every one of those elements. So what you could do is apply a font to that object that instead of letters has icons, and then you could put the corresponding letter in here and use that to create those icons without having to do something more unusual in your CSS. But that's a pseudo element, I think, for all intents. Anything to add?
Something I did that was pretty cool, I thought, that I stumbled on. In the content block there, you can actually reference another attribute of the parent. So you can say the title, and then it'll pull the title attribute and put it in there, and you can make like your own non-JavaScript tooltips, and they're pretty sweet.
What?
Yes.
You want to demo that real quick?
Not really. Just is it title square? Well, I don't know. You have to give that a title tag.
Do you put a selector into the content though?
Yeah.
And then you could use an attribute on the parent?
Yeah.
Like if you hovered over something?
Yeah, so the problem with that is it is like a little bit of a race, so you can make it look like a tooltip, but eventually the title tooltip would pop, the default browser one will pop up.
Ooh.
Hopefully I can figure out ways to press that eventually.
So can I
Or if they just let you style those, would be nice too.
can I add an attribute here, data title?
You don't need data, just title will work.
Are you talking about the attribute? Yeah.
Yeah, and you can put it in there.
You can use that for responsive tables too. I mean, yeah.
But you're using data to make the default title attribute, not tooltip, right?
Well, I just kind of went with data because it seemed natural for some reason. But, so we're going to do title, and then that would be the parent, right? So.
And then in there, in the content.
This is ATTR.
Oh, crap. That's what happened last time. So let's see. That was on section enter. But is the attribute arbitrary? Can it be purple monkey dishwasher?
Yeah.
If you use data dash,
That
you
dash,
can do whatever
you
you want,
can
and
do
nobody will complain.
Anything falls. Cool.
There you go.
You theoretically could use it anywhere, but there's a few contexts which will fuss, like weird edge cases, and if you have data dash in front of it, nobody will fuss ever. So
That's an HTML5 edition, right?
plus some jQuery fallback and all this old browsers, just a million of these. But yeah, data dash is friendlier.
Sweet. So in this instance, I could still use title. I could still get away with that.
Yeah.
It's not being applied to anything. So now what's
It's ATTR and then begin parentheses and then title. I don't think you have to use quotes or anything.
and it's automatically going to apply to the parent element, or does it need to be to the? Does the
Yeah.
title need to be on the element that I'm applying the
this-
pseudo to?
Yeah, you need to put the title on section enter.
Okay. Oh, something jumped. Where is this?
Or expand it so you can highlight it.
Oh, there it is. That's awesome. All right. So there you go. That's really cool. So add your titles. Awesome. One of the other things that I just remembered existed that I never used, but works out great. Let's say I was still scrolled all the way down here, but I know where I am in the DOM, but I'm just not seeing the object. Right click, scroll into view will bring you right up to the beginning of that object.
I didn't know that.
Boom.
Do that again. Dude.
That's a good
Ka-cha.
mind blown back in. They're pretty brilliant, honestly. So, yeah,
Pretty great.
So go to the DOM breakpoints tab over there. Was that new?
No, I think that was just obscured for whatever reason, but that should list,
exactly what my mind was blown.
if we grab one of these,
I angry myself. I was like,
throw something in there, I think it should just list that breakpoint here.
Yeah, but is that
Oh.
JavaScript breakpoints or responsive breakpoints?
I believe that's JavaScript, yeah. Now, is it specific to the element that you've got selected, as the rest of the context seems to be? Wish I knew. Luckily, Matt's preparing the master JS debugging.
No, but I think the DOM points there is when you're in the elements tab and you click on a particular element and you say break on, and it's either attribute modification or something else. Subtree modifications or attributes modifications or node removal. You're telling Chrome anytime X happens to this node, then break. And so that's going to be, I think that's what's listed in that panel.
So if we had a node remove breakpoint,
Yep, that's what it is.
and now we,
Remove that node through whatever.
yeah, there's some jQuery on here, I'm sure.
Or whatever.
That looks like jQuery. That's our element. Oh, that's cool. So using jQuery in the console, we removed the element. It broke. That's awesome. Okay. I think that can't be everything in the elements tab.
What's the properties tab?
Properties is somewhere I don't ever go, actually. It's for the person who really wants to know what the render tree does, maybe.
Yeah,
Where the render tree.
Usually we don't want to deal with property stuff because it's all stuff that's inconsistent across browsers. So usually you rely on like a jQuery or something like that to normalize those properties for you, so you don't have to think about them.
Yeah, that's true. So this would be all of those properties you're accessing when you're interfacing with the DOM directly with vanilla JavaScript.
Almost anything that jQuery accesses is normalizing all these in a way that is the same interface across all different browsers.
So yeah, who cares about that stuff? Okay. That may be everything for elements. You ready?
I'm ready. I want to show you guys some fun things.
Yes.
It's better be better than that is.
It's not going to be, because I didn't think about this beforehand. But while we're on here, so one of the things I noticed you doing was trying to find the thing you had. So a couple shortcuts that are really valuable. I'm going to talk in Mac speak, so sorry PC users, but Command-Shift-C automatically puts you into inspect, or to inspect element selector. So if you're on any site and you just hit Command-Shift-C, you instantly get a thing that pops out the thing for you, and you're choosing whatever element you want. So it's the easiest way for you to get into the panel and to be selecting a particular element in the panel. And then let's say you're here and you want to be doing the work with this particular element. We got it selected, we did something with it, we want to do something with it in the console. If you guys aren't familiar with this, you saw the fact that you can run JavaScript directly from the console. So something like this. If it's valid JavaScript, it's going to work. And if it has access to all the things that have been previously loaded in this page. But often you want to be working with this particular thing. You're like, okay, well, what if it's, .features -title. Well, what if there's many of those? Okay, well, I really just want this one. Okay, I'm going to add an item to this one. Well, you got this thing in Chrome, at least, which is just $0, and that's the DOM element that you're on right now. So, yeah. So you'll see it in just a second. So if you hit $0, whatever element you have selected at that moment is going to be returned. And so then you can, let's get up this one again. And so if you want, you can wrap that in jQuery, and now it's a jQuery object that you can use however you want.
The $0
It's just Chrome. It has nothing to do. The $sign is just incidental. So that's just returning you, I think, just the string, maybe a JavaScript object. But once you wrap it in the $sign, you've now created a jQuery object that's referencing that, against which you can do. I'm pretty sure this is going to work. It's been a long time since I ran. There you go. So you can actually interact with it like from the command line there. So that often allows you to do this kind of triggering and testing type things that we're doing here. And I think, oh yeah, and there's one other thing I wanted to show in the network tab, which is actually how I use it the most. So, oops, your autocomplete doesn't have all the same things I type all the time, surprisingly. So often when I'm, and you don't have my text expander shortcuts either. This is so crazy. Oh my gosh. I wish yeah. So when you're logged into something and you want to be able to debug, for example, AJAX requests that are happening. So we were going to be using something like Pusher, where you've got a WebSocket hooked up between your website and then a WebSocket, and so they're constantly talking back to each other, and it's a really nice way to have your site constantly getting a dump of information from some centralized cloud server. It's too expensive at the moment, so instead we have a thing in JavaScript that says every 15 seconds, ping this events thing in our server, and it'll give you any new updates. It's like the hacky way of doing it, but of course when you have 150 people logged in and they're all pinging your server every 15 seconds, it's gonna shut down the whole thing. So I was going in here and I was needing to debug what's going on, so I wanna look at those results. Well, if you look at this resources tab, this networks tab, it's not just showing you what happened when you first loaded, it's also showing you any AJAX requests that go on. So you can see one by one, you got our get pending events going on here. So not only can you get the form requests or the post requests or the things that load up front, but when you're debugging these kind of difficult to analyze things that are happening in AJAX or form requests when you submit something on page or whatever, you can do that with these as well. And so often when you get something that's broken in AJAX, you get like a poorly handled jQuery result that says error, or it just doesn't do what you're expecting. And you're like, well, why not? I didn't get an error page because it's just an AJAX request. Well, often you click here and you go to preview and it actually shows you that page. So I would get like, oh my gosh, there's a PHP error there. It's because I programmed that thing wrong. So when you're dealing with AJAX, this gives you a lot more flexibility to debug what was the error response, what headers got sent over, what status code came back. Was it a 500? Okay, great, that's a server error. I'll check my server logs. Was it a 400? Oh, I must have typed the address wrong on my jQuery, whatever. So we get a lot more flexibility to figure out what is actually happening when we're looking at AJAX stuff there. This is really powerful. You can see the cookies that are passed along with it. There's a lot of stuff going on here that we can really learn a lot from. Okay, I think that was it for networks. Sources we've looked at. Okay, audits. So profiles and audits, I don't use them frequently, but if you get in a place, actually timeline profiles and audits, if you get in a place where you're having performance issues and you don't understand where the performance issues are coming from, the first place to turn is definitely network and to look through the waterfall like he was showing us. But sometimes you need to get a little further than that, and that's when it gets kind of confusing. First of all, follow Adi Osmani on Twitter, who's this guy. It's going to be a little bit overwhelming because every day he's tweeting about like 10 amazing new things that Chrome can do that like only 5 people in the world actually use. So, but if you kind of get in his space, you're going to start seeing some things like, there you go, that kind of stuff. You're going to start seeing some things that are, for example, advanced CSS performance tooling. Well, what happens when you get so deep into something that you need to figure out why that weird parallax thing isn't scrolling fast enough? Sometimes you just get to the point where all the common sense stuff that we know, less HTTP requests, more performance selectors, whatever, aren't going to be enough. Well, what do we do at that point? These are the guys that are doing this stuff, and he works for Chrome, and so he's on this team that's basically saying, well, you need to know about when it's redrawing and repainting and where the paint areas are, all that kind of stuff. And they're building all these tools into Chrome. So I can't teach you all that right now, but I would just say there's a couple places. So audits is basic. Audits basically runs some of the basic the Yahoo people who came up with all the top things you should do. What's that? YSlow. Yeah, so it runs YSlow plus a couple other things, and so it's telling me, wow, I've got 5 external JavaScripts. So this is your first space to go to, this and then the network timeline. But if you need more, if you're working in really complicated JavaScript stuff, you can actually see the JavaScript memory usage, and you can see all this kind of information about, well, where was the JavaScript memory usage actually happening? And I can see there's nothing here, but you would see, oh my gosh, this one method or this one library, this one process or whatever is totally eating up all of my memory. So this is definitely going to get kind of more confusing when you're looking here. You can turn these into certain graphs and stuff like that, but you can also do the same thing in timeline. And I'm just sorry, I'm not used to having this zoomed in so much. But when you go in here, again, there's lots of different things you can do here, but let's just say I feel like it's scrolling really slow. And I probably will learn later I have some weird CSS3 selector added or some drop shadows that's really slowing stuff down, but I don't know that right now. I hit record and I scroll up and down, or I do whatever thing is feeling really slow. I hit stop, and now I've got a step-by-step set of directions from the browser of what happened during that whole time. So it got this many events for me, mouse moves, and I can look at those events and learn about how long they take and when they're initiated. And then I can see the type of stuff that actually happened in response. it actually had to repaint a little bit. Well, where did it paint? Well, it had to repaint that area because it hadn't loaded. So in something like this, it's going to be a little less significant, but let's go to something that's a little more complicated. So we built this site, and it is using JavaScript to do faux 3D. And so basically what you do is you have multiple planes of content that are moving at different speeds relative to each other to simulate the fact that they're in different 3D planes. So as a result, you've got 3 planes full of content that are being calculated like every second. So when and it plays really annoying music. So when I hit record on this one, and we move it around just a little bit, we'll now see that we're having these other things going on. We have recalculate style. And so again, when you dig deeper in this, you follow Paul Irish and Adi Osmani, you start seeing that like there's certain patterns that can happen over here that indicate you're doing something poorly. So for example, one of the things they say is, if every millisecond you see an X entry, that means your JavaScript is being too aggressive, or your JavaScript is not passing off to request animation frame, or all sorts of other geeky things you don't need to worry about right now. But basically, when you get to this place where you're needing to really deeply diagram, like, oh my gosh, I did all this crazy stuff for this parallax library or whatever, and I don't know why it's not being performant enough, these are the spaces you're going to start looking. And if you don't know what they do, cool, just remember it's in this tab, go and then Google the crap out of this tab, or Adi Osmani's name, or his blog or whatever. But you can see up here we're getting little things like during this particular period of time, these are 60 frames per second and 30 frames per second. And I can say, oh, well, I know that I'd really like everything to be operating at 60 frames per second. Well, crap, over here, it was bumping up into 30 frames per second. There's probably something right in this little point here that happened that was a little less performant than I wanted. So this is giving us all this really detailed information that we never, ever, ever had before. It's a little confusing and overwhelming at times, but when you really need to get geeky on it, that's the place to go. And then finally, resources. This is a total opposite level. This is just all the pieces that are being used here. So we saw some of the stuff in terms of the sources. So we've got all of our actual content, fonts, images, style sheets, all that kind of stuff. We've also got the content that is not particularly related to just HTML. So our local storage, if you're using it, is here. You can see we're using local storage caches. Well, we're not, but YouTube is. Session storage, you're seldom going to see anything here. And then cookies. You can actually go through and look at every single cookie that was set, and you can see all the details about it, and you can manually hack your own cookies there.
Local storage, same as cookie?
No, local storage is an HTML5 thing that actually allows you to store up to a certain amount of data, whereas a cookie is super, super small. It's just for little bits of preferences and stuff like that. Local storage is actually meant for storing data. It's still limited, but it's much less limited than cookies, but it's a lot newer and fresher. But the idea is when you've got something big enough that you don't want to be downloading it at every single page load, local storage is the place to put it. It's also the place where if you've got something that, back when it was really popular to have your app work even when you didn't have the internet, is because it was dumping the whole application state into local storage and reading out of there. And then there was some process syncing local storage with the remote server versus relying on the remote server actively.
It's a lot of bad rap now too, is being too slow or synchronous.
Yeah, there's all sorts of issues in terms of what we use to access local storage, and then if you Google app cache, application cache, and local storage, and you'll find the biggest variety of responses about it ever. We use local storage, but you need to know the pros and cons of each of these tools as you're using them. So, so those are some of the things you have available to you. There was something else I wanted to show you guys.
What is the WebSQL and IndexedDB?
They were, again, HTML5 things that were supposed to put more back-end type storage available in the browser.
Nobody uses them?
No, not that nobody uses them, but it's super edge case, and there's a lot of concerns with performance, stuff like that. Take a look at them if there's something you're interested in, but the vast majority of us will never have any use for them. So, so that was one of the things I was going to say. If you guys aren't familiar, this is something that we often run into as a problem, is that so we've figured out the fact that we can make edits to our code, and it's neat, right? I can change the text here, I can drag it along, I can preview it. Well, that's really great. Well, what if you're building a web app? So I run the software as a service, and it handles people's financial information. So it's really important that it, be secure. So what if I'm editing my contact, and it is contact ID 67913, I'm hoping this is not real. This is good. This is not actual information. And I want to edit this contact, and I go in, and I inspect here, and let's say I'm actually using somebody else's, and I look at the form right here, and I say, you know what, I bet if there's a form for this contact, it's got this person's contact ID stored in there somewhere, right? Okay, well that's not it. Oh, there you go. Look, it's actually in the URL of the form. Well, what happens if I edit this attribute and I change it to be this? And now I hit submit in this form. So if your backend isn't planning for the fact that your users can hack every single line of your code, they could just have gone in and now edited somebody else's user. Or what if I went to the place where I edit my own profile and I replaced the user ID for me, user 5000, with user ID 1, which is probably the first user in the system, which is probably someone with admin permissions, and I change it to be my email address and my password. It's one of the most common ways that like beginning started out kind of people get hacked is because they don't think about the fact that somebody with access to dev tools and a little bit of a brain can all of a sudden start sneaking into the hidden stuff and making changes here and there. So just knowing that this is possible hopefully can get us in a space of recognizing that the hackers already have these tools already and they already know how to use them. So start thinking creatively about like, man, if I were going to compromise the security of my thing, how would I do that using these? So I think that's all I have. Other than logging out. So.
Let me see if there's anything else in there.
There's got to be a few more topics.
Yeah, I remember thinking as you guys were.
Source maps for preprocessors, SAS, and the like.
Yeah, and another thing that we were going to talk about is remote debugging. You know, which you want to do source maps, Kyle? Yeah.
SAS setup on there?
Yeah. I got SAS. I don't have it set up with source maps or anything like that, but
I think you have to configure your...
yeah, you'd have to configure your compass and
But the point, if you use SAS or another preprocessor, when you inspect and you see the CSS, it'll actually tell you the unprocessed, so to speak, SAS file of the line.
yeah.
So,
And I think isn't there
it's in there, let's set up a word.
It's enable CSS source maps.
Yeah.
right here? Yeah.
So basically, you have another file in addition to your compiled CSS file. You have another file that's referenced by your CSS file that the browser can use to map between your compiled and your pre-compiled sources.
Yeah. So like the end result of it is if you're using less or SAS or something like that, it'll say, you know, line 52 of this partial, which is nice. So yeah. I think that's about it, right? You got console on. Crap. I learned something.
Oh, the click, how to figure out the click handlers.
Yeah, come on up.
Do you want your reward here?
My what?
Reward here. For handling the surprise presentation.
Thanks.
Oh, and you don't have Alfred. How am I supposed to navigate your computer? Oh, is it mapped to something else? Oh, it's mapped to something else. Okay, so we're writing a script. I should have just put that up online somewhere.
You can use Emmet and Sublime if you want.
I'd rather actually just use one of the paste bins. What do you use? Not paste bin, one of the ones where you can actually generate on your own. What's that?
JSBin or CodePen?
Yeah, but one that you have to log in. JS. Yeah, you have to log into JSFill. Okay. So, give me jQuery to make my life easier. I'd written the whole thing out. What's that? I'd written the whole thing out on my screen and then forgot to put it online somewhere. So, okay, so we've got div ID equals click me.
You can use Emmet here too.
And then I'm trying to remember what I was doing there.
Mike's gonna take your beer.
Do it.
Here, I'm at.
Oh, you gotta run this one. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not used to this mess. Okay. So, event listeners, click, div at click me. It's defined here. This is your handler function. So the issues we're running into here is that it's being defined with jQuery.
Yeah, you're looking at the handler of jQuery, it's not your own.
Right. So let's see. The one I did showed you how to do it without jQuery because I knew this was going to be a part of it. But this is a perfect opportunity for us to find this. But normally, if you're not dealing with jQuery, this right here is literally going to show where it's defined. So what I had done was instead like, document.get element by ID, click me or whatever, and then you did the whole whatever it is. It ends up being dot add event listener or whatever. If you do that, and that's on line 5, this literally is just going to say line 5, and you click on it, it takes you to line 5.
Yeah.
So the function definition problem you're having there is just because of the way that jQuery binds things. There is a way in here to get the call stack, but that I'm not sure. So that's why I wanted to show it to you without jQuery. But I don't think I have that. So, but anyway, if you're not using jQuery, that's all there, and the reason that it's showing jQuery is because jQuery. So
All jQuery.
that's all I got.
The problem I've had too, though, is normally there won't be just one event handler. You'll go in there and you'll see like a million of them, and I've tried like 3 or 4 times, and then I've finally just written it off. I don't even go to this tab anymore because I've never gotten any.
It's like a last ditch. You go
Yeah.
there, it's like, well, I
What
give
was I
up.
thinking?
But I've never been sure how it represents bubbling or bubble events either. If that's why I can't find what I'm looking for. But generally, it's my handler. I know where it is, but just trying to find somebody else's.
Are we all done here? Anything else? Drink now, forever hold your peace.